The second intifada included suicide bombings against Israelis of the most gruesome type. I mentioned in that piece.
Officials are investigating after a 33-year-old man fell to his death this week while touring the Grand Canyon, walking across the viewing platform.
Too many strange events are happening at the Grand Canyon, and no one knows why. From visitors getting spiritually cursed after taking items from the canyon to sudden deaths that cannot be explained.
One of the hottest places in the country is the Grand Canyon, where 3 hikers have died in just the past month, including one man whose heartbroken niece is warning everyone to respect nature.
The Grand Canyon is more than just a national park. If you think these facts about the famous tourist location are unsettling, wait until you hear about the terrifying incident that just happened in recent weeks that prompted a Grand Canyon official to make a final warning to the public. Journalist and political commentator Douglas Murray has also aired his views on it, and they seem to explain all that has been happening in this national park. What was the Grand Canyon official's final warning, and what has Douglas Murray said? Join us as we reveal the incident that happened in the Grand Canyon, recently taking the world by storm. The tragic fall of the protective railing. Tourists and visitors at the Grand Canyon are constantly cautioned by officials not to go beyond the safety barriers and balance dangerously between rocks. The reason behind this warning is very simple. The risk of falling into the canyon is too high to ignore. Unfortunately, a tourist named Cole failed to adhere to the warning and suffered a horrible fall. Cole's incident could have ended in tragedy, but luckily he did not fall into the canyon itself, and he managed to survive. While he was lucky enough to not lose his life, he couldn't escape suffering serious injuries. He had a broken neck and back, a collapsed lung, and the need for emergency rescue and a tracheotomy. The gruesome details of Cole's fall were recently shared on Reddit, but that's not even half of it. In a YouTube video, Cole's brother Stephen Hove held a conversation with Cole where he talked about the tragic incident.
Cole, this is my brother that fell in the Grand Canyon. I know some of y'all been asking about him, seeing if he's all right, and I guess
I'm doing okay, except for the scars.
It's a good thing that even after his horrible experience, Cole was in good spirits. British author, conservative political commentator, cultural critic and journalist Douglas Murray is known to encourage free speech. Because of his advocacy for freedom of speech, the public believes he agrees with Grand Canyon officials in issuing warnings about people carelessly climbing off the railings and not following the rules set by the national park. Cole's scary fall might teach him to be more careful in the future, but it's a hard way to learn that breaking safety rules in national parks is dangerous, not just for himself, but also for park workers and emergency helpers who have to rescue him. You might be wondering why countless tourists visit the Grand Canyon if it's so risky. Well, the Grand Canyon is too beautiful and unique to resist. It is located within Grand Canyon National Park, the Kaibab National Forest, the Grand Canyon Parashant National Monument, the Hualapai Indian Reservation, the Havasupai Indian Reservation, and the Navajo Nation. The weather at the Grand Canyon varies depending on the rim and time of year, so tourists visit the park at their favorite time of the year to experience the Grand Canyon during their favorite weather.
And speaking of vacations, summer travel season is right around the corner, and many Americans will be heading out to our beautiful national parks.
Temperatures on the North Rim are generally lower than those on the South Rim, and heavy rains are common on both rims during the summer months. State Route 67 to the North Rim is limited during the winter season due to road closures, so if you plan to visit, you should definitely plan accordingly. A museum called the Smithsonian Institution is a famous research center in Washington, D.C. that has a special connection to the Grand Canyon.
When you think of the Smithsonian, you probably picture all the impressive museums lining the National Mall in Washington, D.C. But for 100 years, the Smithsonian has also been running a tropical research institute.
A long time ago, a man named John Wesley Powell led a group of explorers through the Grand Canyon.
During an expedition in 1540, Major John Wesley Powell and his team in 1869 were the first to successfully take wooden boats down the Colorado River and through the canyon.
Powell was also the first leader of the Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology, which studies the cultures of different people. This was the first time the government had funded a trip through the Grand Canyon. Today, the Smithsonian offers a special trip called a Journey that takes people through the Grand Canyon and other canyons in Arizona and Utah. This trip lasts for 11 days and shows people the beauty and wonder of these natural treasures. Some of the rocks and monuments in the Grand Canyon have names that come from ancient Egypt, like the Osiris Tower and the Temple of Ra. This is because the Grand Canyon is so big and impressive that it reminds people of the pyramids in Egypt. Some people have said that a scientist from the Smithsonian found hidden tunnels and treasures in the Grand Canyon, but the Smithsonian has said that this is not true. Others claim the scientists found something other than hidden tunnels but are hiding both the discovery and news of it from the world. While the suspense has existed for years, no one knows if the Smithsonian is being entirely transparent. This mystery has drawn attention to the Smithsonian's special collection of artifacts and documents related to the Grand Canyon. This collection includes things like photos, maps, and letters from people who have explored the canyon. The viral incident involving Cole's Fall isn't the first time the Grand Canyon has trended for a fatal disaster. On June 30th, 1956, a tragic accident happened in the sky above the Grand Canyon in Arizona. A plane from United Airlines, a Douglas DC-7, crashed into another plane from Transworld Airlines, a Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation. This terrible event occurred at around 10:30 in the morning. The two planes hit each other at an angle of 25 degrees, with the United plane tilting to the right and going downwards. After investigating the crash, experts found out that the pilots of the United plane might have seen the other plane approaching and tried to avoid it. The way the plane was moving, banking to the right and pitching down, proves that the pilots were trying to take evasive action. When the two planes collided, the left wing of the DC-7 hit the back of the Constellation, causing the tail section to break off. The wing also hit the main body of the Constellation, damaging it badly. At the same time, the propeller on the DC-7's left engine cut into the bottom of the Constellation's body, creating deep gashes. The damage caused the Constellation's body to burst open, leading to a sudden loss of air pressure. This is confirmed by the fact that small items like seats, luggage, and personal belongings were scattered over a wide area. The impact was so severe that it caused a lot of destruction to both planes, leading to a tragic outcome. When the tail section broke off, the Constellation lost control and plummeted towards the ground in a steep, vertical dive. The plane was falling over 700 feet per second, and that fall was so fast that it looked like a stone dropping from the sky. It crashed into the side of a ravine on Temple Butte, a mountain in the Grand Canyon, and broke apart on impact, killing everyone on board instantly. The crash was so violent that it triggered a fierce fire, fueled by the plane's fuel. The fire raged on, consuming the wreckage. The tail section, though badly damaged, was still recognizable and came to rest nearby. The scene was one of utter destruction, with debris scattered all over the ravine. The crash happened in a remote area with no radar coverage, and there were no devices on the planes that could have helped investigators reconstruct the accident. The last reports from the planes didn't show their exact locations, and there were no witnesses to the collision or the crashes. This made it very difficult for investigators to piece together what had happened. The extent of the Grand Canyon mid-air collision. The only sign that something was wrong came when radio operators in Salt Lake City and San Francisco heard a strange and unclear message from Flight 718. This was the last message received from either plane.
Damn! What's he doing there? Oh God! Bang, 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 bang!
Investigators later listened to a recording of the message and figured out what was said. They heard the voice of the co-pilot, Robert Harms, saying they were falling into Salt Lake. In the background, investigators could hear the captain, Shirley, shouting urgently. He was probably trying to regain control of the plane, but it was too late. The captain's voice was shrill and desperate as he cried out that they pulled up. The investigators inferred these last words from the context, as they weren't clearly spoken. This garbled transmission was the final communication from the doomed flight. When the two planes failed to report their positions for a while, they were considered missing, and search and rescue efforts began. The searchers didn't know where to look, but they were determined to find the planes. Later that day, two brothers, Henry and Parlin Hudgen, who ran a small air taxi service called Grand Canyon Airlines, spotted the wreckage. They were flying over the area where the Colorado and Little Colorado rivers meet. Earlier that day, Parlin had seen thick black smoke rising from the direction of Temple Butte, where the Constellation had crashed. At the time, he thought it was just a brush fire started by lightning and didn't think much of it, but later, he realized that the smoke he saw earlier was from a plane crash. Parlin and his brother decided to investigate further and flew a small plane into the canyon to search for signs of a crash. They spotted the tail section of the constellation and reported what they found to the authorities. The next day, the brothers located the wreckage of the DC-7. After that, many helicopter missions were flown to the crash sites to search for and identify the victims, as well as to recover pieces of the planes for investigation. This was a difficult and dangerous task, considering the rough grounds and unpredictable air currents in the canyon. On July 9, 1956, a large funeral was held at the south rim of the Grand Canyon to honor the victims of TWA Flight 2. Many people came to pay their respects to those who had lost their lives in the tragic accident. The funeral was a solemn reminder of the devastating crash that had occurred just a few days earlier. The victims of the United flight were buried in a special cemetery in the Grand Canyon, with 29 unidentified individuals laid to rest in 4 coffins. The majority of the TWA passengers and crew, 66 in total, were buried in a mass grave in Flagstaff, Arizona. It took several years for most of the wreckage to be removed from the canyon, and even today, some pieces of the planes are still at the crash sites. Cole's tragic fall trending on the internet made some unusual facts about the national park become exposed on social media, and you might be shocked by some of them. If you've ever heard of Bigfoot, you'll understand why the internet is so invested in the recent happenings at the Grand Canyon. Usually, you get to hear more about Bigfoot sightings in the Pacific Northwest, but there have also been reported sightings in the Grand Canyon. For many years, people have been fascinated by the legend of a mysterious creature called Bigfoot, also known as the Mogollon Monster.
In this case, a good monster story, as in the Mogollon Monster, Arizona's very own Bigfoot.
This creature is said to roam the area around the Mogollon Rim, where many people have reported seeing it. It's described as a tall, hairy being with dark brown or black hair that's very long, and it's said to be between 6 and 8 feet tall. People who claim to have seen Bigfoot say that it has a strong, fishy smell and makes a very loud, screeching noise. This creature is a major part of the many stories and legends that surround the Grand Canyon. Visitors and fans of the Grand Canyon have been very invested in stories of Bigfoot sightings, which describe a giant, hairy creature wandering through the canyon. These stories add to a growing collection of legends that claim the Grand Canyon is not just a natural wonder, but also a place where mysterious creatures might exist. People have been reporting sightings of the Mogollon Monster, another name for Bigfoot, since 1903. One story from that time describes a massive creature covered in gray hair, with sharp claws and bright green eyes.
So you're on a scenic train ride through southwest Colorado when suddenly you see
an elusive creature.
Wait, is that?
While some people believe they've seen Bigfoot, others are skeptical, and the creature is still a topic of debate. In 2019, a strange incident happened at the Grand Canyon National Park. A man was camping there when he fired a gunshot. The park rangers who enforce the law went to investigate. Another camper said the man fired the shot because he thought he saw Bigfoot. The park officials confirmed that they received a report of someone with a gun at one of the campsites in the park. They quickly sent law enforcement rangers to check it out. Who knows? Bigfoot was probably really there. Grand Canyon Park rangers have noticed a peculiar trend apart from the sightings of Bigfoot. Past visitors have been returning items they had taken from the park. Rangers received letters and packages containing items like rocks, fossils, and plants that visitors had collected as souvenirs. But these visitors later believed that these items were cursed, bringing them bad luck. To break the curse, they sent the items back to the park, hoping to reverse their misfortune. According to legend, the Grand Canyon is said to be cursed, and anyone who takes something from the park without permission will face bad luck. This belief has been passed down through the years, warning visitors not to remove anything from the park, including rocks, fossils, and plants. While it may seem superstitious, many people believe in the curse and take steps to avoid it. By returning their souvenirs, they hope to restore balance and avoid any further misfortune. That's not all. More mysteries at the Grand Canyon. The Navajo people have a long history of storytelling, and one of the most interesting tales is about mysterious creatures with wings that live in the Grand Canyon. These creatures are described as looking like pterosaurs or thunderbirds and are believed to be guardians of the land. They are said to keep the land safe from harm, and their legend has been passed down through generations of Navajo people. The Navajo Indians also believe in the legend of skinwalkers, who are medicine men with the power to transform into wild animals. When they transform, they keep their human thoughts and abilities, but also gain the abilities of the animal. This legend is a big part of Navajo culture and is often used to explain strange things that happen in the Grand Canyon. While skinwalkers are usually associated with nighttime, some people claim to have seen them during the day too. If you're hiking in the canyon and see human footprints that suddenly turn into animal tracks, you might be close to a skinwalker. There have also been claims that the Grand Canyon is frequented by aliens. In October 2022, a story surfaced about a possible discovery made by Wayne Wells using Google Earth. According to reports, Wells might have found a mysterious doorway in the Grand Canyon that looked like it was carved into the desert, but not everyone was convinced that it was a doorway, and some people thought it was just an old abandoned mine shaft. While there was excitement at first, the story didn't gain much traction, even among those interested in UFOs and extraterrestrial life. This wasn't the first time someone claimed to have found evidence of aliens in the Grand Canyon. Similar claims have been made before, but they haven't been proven. Earlier in 2022, a similar story about a doorway on Mars gained more attention, but the Grand Canyon story didn't get as much interest. Hank Crastman's story is one of the most well-known accounts of an alien portal encounter in the Grand Canyon. Crastman was a student in the early 1960s, and he became friends with a Hopi student named Kapavi, who was from the Native American group that lived in and around the Grand Canyon. According to Crastman, Kapavi took him on a secret journey into the wilderness, blindfolded on horseback. They traveled for a long time until Kapavi finally removed the blindfold, and Crastman was amazed by what he saw. Crastman claims that they were standing in front of a massive rock face, but when he put his hand on the rock, it surprisingly passed through it. Hank Crastman believed that the hidden location he visited with Kapavi was a portal or vortex that connected Earth to another dimension. He claimed that walking through the portal led him through a series of chambers, eventually revealing a large and advanced city. The city was unlike anything he had ever seen, with strange technology and architecture that seemed to be hidden within the Grand Canyon. Crastman's seemingly unbelievable story has received a lot of skepticism, as he was unable to find the portal again even after many attempts. To this day, no one else has been able to locate the alleged portal or city, leading many to doubt Crastman's claims. Unfazed by the skepticism, Crastman firmly stood by his story until he died in 2010. Many think the Grand Canyon being the portal between aliens and humans is why the park has restricted access to certain areas, as those areas are controlled by the government. Which of these mysteries about the Grand Canyon did you find the hardest to believe, and what do you think about it being a portal between aliens and us humans? We would love to know in the comments. If you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to leave a like, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next updates. Also, click the next video on your screen to enjoy more exciting content.